Welcome to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
All right, another Scrap Life podcast. I think this is an awesome fit for our Generational Courage segment, just because I'm a big proponent of generational business. Our industry is driven by people that are they're multi-generational, right? I mean, second, third, fourth generation. And I got an awesome opportunity today. Thank you, Jennifer, for setting this up to sit down with Nidhi Turakhia from Allied Alloys, who's second generation. Her dad, an immigrant, a straight hustler, if you were to say it, right? If I was to say it, those are my words. But thank you for the tour this morning. Thank you for everything, for taking the time. Now that you're the newly elected CEO of this company, which is awesome. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for being here.
So your dad, I love telling stories about my dad, and so I want to hear right out the gate, tell me about your dad. Tell me how did Alloyd come about?
Oh, my dad, I think the word that you used just now, hustler, is totally my dad. I mean, he's just a workhorse. One of the first Indians back in early 1980s to be in the recycling industry, especially down here in Texas. It was very rare. So he started off, actually, by qualification, he's a pharmacist. So when we moved here in 1981, he worked for Walgreens for 2 weeks. And he was like, no, this is not pharmacy. Back in India, you're actually making the medicine in a lab.
Okay.
Here, you're just filling bottles. So he's like, nope, can't do it. So ran into another gentleman that was buying, recycling at that time, copper and brass, and was like, let me try another business. So went from pharmacy to a non-ferrous yard back in 1981. And
that's a far jump.
It's a huge jump. And I'm like, how does that happen?
People don't connect those two. I guess other than, I have a way, but go ahead.
I think your way is going to be like mine, the lab.
Yeah, exactly. That and making blends.
Exactly. Yeah. So huge jump. Started non-ferrous. Was one of the first recyclers to export brass and copper items into India. And that opened a lot of doors. And so, I mean, his story is just amazing. I mean, like you said, being an immigrant, he was living the American dream. He made it happen just from sheer dedication and persistence and work.
And he's still working to this day,
yeah,
right?
You
said he's in India
He's
right
in
now.
India right now.
Yeah, working or vacation,
Correct.
working or just straight working?
Straight working. Working.
And just basically touching base with your consumers over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking to, I was kind of talking to your dispatch guy, and he's, I've talked to a few people now here, and like you said, your truck driver been here for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have a dedicated, people, they don't just come in and go, right?
That's
you've
correct.
got a ton of 10, 20, multiple generation people themselves, right? Yeah. Or multiple decade people. So you guys, Alloyd started in what year?
2006 is when it was formed, and it was formed by actually merging of two other companies.
Okay.
We had nothing to do with stainless and nickel alloys. Aside from we were taking their material and marketing it into India. Also one of the first to do a 316, 304 blend, into India. And turns out India loved it. The stainless steel mills loved it. It was easy for them to throw it into a furnace. So that was kind of my beginning of learning stainless and nickel alloys. So relatively still young. 2006 was, not even 20 years ago.
Yeah. So before that, you said you were just kind of learning the nickel alloys. What were you doing prior?
So I graduated from college in 2003, and my dad had a proposition. He was like, give me 6 months. If you don't like it, then you could still pursue law school, because that was my dream.
Okay.
Never looked back. Instead of going, and sitting for an LSAT, I changed it completely, did, an MBA.
Yeah.
So 2003 was my beginning as full time, but I
Okay.
grew up in the industry just like you.
Yes.
High school, my internships were at the scrapyard. Like, there was no question.
So what'd you do? Like, what was the...
I did import export documentation, letters of credit. I was kind of helping with the back office
On the
stuff.
admin side?
Exactly.
Yeah. But which then gives you kind of purview. You get to see like what's being traded, what the prices are being traded at, what the logistics situation looks like. It kind of gives you that whole back end. Like it kind of, I think a lot of people in say your second or third generation, they start like from even in me, I started in the warehouse, right? Like I started like on the physical labor side, but I feel like there's just as good of a path, or maybe even better, really, if you can understand all the back end and then take the time and go understand the operations. It feels like there's not really one set way to do it, because obviously whatever you were doing on the internship side, you didn't mind it. You're at least somewhat intrigued by it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it, because you literally are, like you said, you're connecting the dots, right? You're dealing with what's actually going into another country, and for me that was super exciting.
So where was the first physical location that you guys had? Your dad had?
It was a company called Ruby Metals, which has been dissolved, but it was here in Houston. It was in Pasadena, so not far from us right now.
Not far from Tecamet, which is
correct.
I was telling you earlier, we came down and we had dinner last night with Lars from Tecamet, and somebody we've been selling catalytic converters to for 10 years now. Every time I come to Houston, I'm always just enthralled by how much industry there is here. Coming from Idaho, I mean, the whole state population, I think, is just shy of 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know Houston's the third largest city now in the United States?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the population of Houston?
It's like between 5 and 6 million right now. It's a triple of Idaho.
Yeah, just our whole state.
Exactly.
Your city. Plus, that doesn't even count like your outlying, right? Like the suburbs. Yeah. So, and we were on the way in, there's just so much industry just on this block.
Yes.
I mean, the recycling industry, the scrap industry, call it what you want to, Sacco, I'm sorry, just on this block, you have a textile recycler, obviously it's
plastic recycler,
recycler, a nickel stand, and you guys are also, you guys have iron, you guys have steel, you have, other materials in your yards, which I assume helps you make the solid blend.
That's correct.
I assume that's the purpose
That
of it.
is
You're
correct.
not specifically targeting those items here, or is it just if it comes with the material? How does that work on your end if you're...
Well, obviously, for sure, because all of our stainless blends is, at least minimum 70% ferrous, right? So if I'm short on iron, I'm definitely going to go out and specifically target that and buy as much as I can. But typically our loads are, something our supplier, like we were talking about, a supplier will call me and be like, hey, can I just throw a box of, 409 cat converters on the truck? Sure.
Yeah.
Because I need everything else that you're giving me.
Yeah.
So it just depends. We have to move with the market.
So which opens you up to be able to receive material from a lot more people if you can say, yeah, I can take that, or I can take that, because they want to sell a full truckload, maximize freight, which then gives you the opportunity to say, oh, I can take. So has that forced you to open up to take more material, more items than normally you kind of thought you would initially, or has it just always been that way?
I think it's right now because supply is so tight. We are all seeing it, especially in nickel-based alloys. Now we're kind of being forced to keep that open and take things that pretty much in the past I could be very selective on, which is fine. Real estate. If you have the real estate, you're gonna take it.
Exactly. And I think that's, one of the reasons we do demo work is people, these companies have this facility. Like we were just quoting a demo Nick and I were quoting a demo this last week, and the real estate's so expensive where we're at that they're like, well, if we demo this part of all these old equipment out of this building, we can repurpose this and be able to use this for more manufacturing, right? And I assume real estate doesn't, like the actual cost of real estate here doesn't, because it feels like there's a lot more of it, but maybe it's not. Maybe do you see the cost of real estate like on the industrial side? Has that been is it around here? Has it gone up significantly?
I think real estate in Texas has gone up, period, especially post-COVID. You could think California. You could think New York.
Not a true
everyone's
Californian, but yeah. I like to mess with her about it.
No, I mean, everyone's moving to Texas, right? That's been the big trend. That's what everyone's talking about.
Idaho, Texas, we're getting a lot of that as well.
And as you see, we have a lot of land.
So to go back to, I sometimes I get off track, but ultimately, like, your dad, you do the internship while you're in high school and coming up, and he gives you the 6 month, hey, give me 6 months. What do you start doing in those 6 months that enabled you to totally switch course? Like, what was it in those 6 months that you're like, yeah, I could see myself not going to law school and entering into the family business?
That's a great question. And I actually have a very definite answer for it. I remember exactly when and where I was when I was like, okay, let me change my entire course. It was BIR. It was my first conference in person in the recycling industry, and it happened to be BIR Paris.
Oh, wow.
And so now I am meeting people that are in our industry, and I'm like, oh, wait, there's more people like me out here? I'm not just on my own island. And meeting those people and developing those relationships and hearing their stories was when I was like, yeah, I'm going to shift my entire course and stay in this industry.
And I think people ask the question, like, what keeps you in the industry? What makes you love this industry? And you've heard that's like a cliche answer, but like it's only cliche because it's so true, right? People say it's the people. And I think that's the reason why people have a hard time. Even your dad, I mean, as much of a workhorse as he is, I think sometimes people have a hard time getting out of the industry because they enjoy the people that they trade with, that they deal with, and that they're dealing with all the time.
Yeah, because they're friends, right?
Yeah, become, like, literally, you become friends. And even people you work with, and my wife's like, and we'd have this conversation regularly. What makes you, like, not be burnt that you have to go to work today every day? I was like, because I like everybody I pretty much get to deal with. We have our problems. We're going to have to fight issues always. As a CEO, as you know, you're going to always have problems, but generally speaking, the good so far outweighs the bad on the people side, that you're like, yeah, I can work through a ton of these issues. So on the people side, so you go to BIR, you're at a conference, you're looking around, and which is something I want to go to. I still have never been to a BIR event. Do you recommend?
But this was when I was doing a lot of export, right? Okay. So BIR naturally was, the conference that I first attended, but it's because of that conference I met Robin, and that introduced and opened the door to ISRI.
Okay.
And so then I started attending every single ISRI conference, have not missed one still, and this is 20 years now. And so I do recommend BIR if you're gonna, try and expand your footprint into
on the export side.
Correct.
Just because it opens you up to all those consumers.
Exactly.
And
the different countries that are being represented.
Which for you guys is a big part of your business because you do export a lot of material, right?
We do.
And that's kind of really how you cut your teeth.
Exactly. So I would say, if you asked me this probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, it would have been a different answer. But right now, I would say probably 30-40% is being exported. The balance is staying, domestic. But it's a big chunk of what we do.
How much has that trade flip-flopped, like in the last couple of years? Is it?
So it depends on the markets that we generally follow and watch would be Asia. So for me, it's predominantly India. So it depends on where India is, in terms of just their strength, and how much stainless steel that they want to consume or need to consume. So this year's gonna be really interesting because it's an election year.
Yeah.
So ask me in a year, and I'll tell you if it's flipped out.
An interesting year, like domestically, right? But
globally, because India is also election.
Oh, okay.
So Prime Minister Modi, if he stays in office, and the infrastructure the government has backed so far will continue.
I was just reading an article on Bloomberg yesterday on the airplane, and they were talking about the strength of India and like them kind of taking up a bunch of the slack that China was on the consumption side. And so the strength being that moving forward in the next decade, that India was going to be not just, they are a player today, but even more of a bigger player at the table. So that probably bodes well, I think, for you, for your company, for anybody exporting alloys, to India. I have to think that's a good thing for you guys.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. I mean, they're predicting by 2030, India is going to be the powerhouse, and they've already surpassed China in terms of population. So it's going to be really interesting what happens.
Is that what's driving it?
100%.
Just people trying to, move, say, third to second to first world.
Exactly.
It's the same thing that drove the Chinese growth over all those years?
Exactly. It's a domino effect. I mean, consumer spending is going up.
How important of a role does the currency play when you're trading? I mean, are you guys hedging the currency and stuff too, or are you guys?
We're not.
Okay.
We're not. So all of our hedging is natural. We don't. Aside from that, we do zero hedging.
I don't hedge either. That's why I was curious.
Yeah.
Like people ask me all the time, "Do you hedge? Do this?" I was like, "No, we just kind of buy against the market and we try and get ourselves timed efficiently and get our throughput and just try and it is what
it's
it
risky.
is. It is.
It's
The
a
business
gamble.
is risky. It takes a lot of, like going back to it, like our business, our industry, it takes a lot of courage to, hedging aside, to just do what we do every day and know that we're not the most, positively, viewed industry. Like you said, you fight some tough battles here locally. You guys are doing the right thing. You're doing everything you can to not just improve your facility, but to improve the area that around you. And I think it is risky to enter into this business when you are smart enough to go to law school. Luckily, I was never smart enough to go to law school, so my one way was like, I gotta go into the scrap industry. Luckily, I enjoyed it. So moving, like when you look at it with your dad, like what was some of the key things, and I don't want to leave your mom out. I know we mostly talk about your dad. I don't know if your mom was involved in the business or not. But what do you think were some of the things that, by you watching your dad, that you really took away from how he operated, how he operates today, that's kind of enabled you to have the success that you've had?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the key takeaway is my dad's work ethic. That was a big one for me.
Yeah.
He's still, as you know, still such a big believer on, like, you should be here when the sun's up and you shouldn't leave until the sun sets, and this generation, I think, is changing the mentality of that. So his work ethic, but also I laugh. Just being Indian, our negotiation skills, like that's probably the one thing I've taken away, right? We want everything for free, or if not half off.
Yeah,
so.
You want a deal.
Exactly. Yeah. So just a wheeling and dealing. So those are two things.
Well, and your dad had to be he had to be a hustler. He had to be, you have to have a strong work ethic to immigrate here and then build the type of, business and what he's been able to do. But I think that what made my dad successful was my grandfather, getting, cutting his teeth and kind of getting him going. And I'd like to think what made my dad successful is having me come in and help him and bring in another generation, the next generation. And I also think that without those previous generations, we wouldn't be able to do what we do today, right? We were given a lot of opportunity. Anytime a lot of opportunity is given, a lot of work is needed to sustain it. So you were just telling me earlier that you recently, as of, was it January? Are now officially the CEO of Allied, I'm sorry. Was that a proud moment for your dad?
Very proud moment. Yeah, very proud moment. He, typical Asian, it's even in school, if I brought home 100, it was like, why isn't this 110, on a grade? So typical Asian.
Yeah.
Immigrant mentality. So with him not having to really say it, I know how proud he was because he was announcing it to everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, I've done good by my dad.
Yeah. So when I think about your journey and I think about like you going to BIR and then meeting Robin, and which is what got you on the ISRI journey. So tell me about the ISRI journey for you and kind of how that's really got you even more involved in the industry. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you want to discuss as far as ISRI goes?
My ISRI journey, I actually took the traditional route. So I started with the Gulf Coast region. I really wanted to make an impact here in my area. So moved through all the offices, am now immediate past president of the Gulf Coast region. But that opened the door to ISRI National. Nice. Really seeing how our trade association works behind the scenes, how much they do in terms of lobbying, how many changes in laws that they are influencing for our positive future.
Yeah.
That was big for me. It was a huge eye-opener. So now that my office ship is over for Gulf Coast, I've decided to pursue it more on a national level. So I'm actually a director at large. So I do sit on the ISRI National Board, and will be in the running for a campaign to be Secretary Treasurer for ISRI National.
That's
so let's
awesome.
see.
Yeah.
There's still a journey ahead of me, but it's already been a long one.
Yeah, it's been a long. Did your dad encourage that? Was he involved in that, or was it just something you came upon and said, I want to make an impact in the industry?
No, I'm not going to say he encouraged it because I still this mentality is changing, and you're going to agree with me on this. They come from a generation that was always flying under the radar, right? Like it didn't want anything public. I don't think my dad would ever sit for a podcast 20 years ago. Now maybe. So the perception's changing. So I'm not going to say he encouraged it because he also knew that means I'm bringing Allied Alloys to the limelight.
Yeah.
But when he started seeing the positive impact, then it was like, oh, okay, well, yes, you continue down that path.
Yeah, because it creates connections, it creates opportunities, it creates, business opportunities. Like it's both, right? You're shining a brighter light on the industry, and I think part of that deal too is, one of the reasons like when I saw Jennifer on LinkedIn and we connected again was, there's not as many females in the industry, right, as there could be because maybe us as business owners, operators, we haven't said like we want more talent, right? Regardless of where you're from, whether you're a male or a female, like we want talent, and talent comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And I think that's the biggest thing I think that we can promote is like for the next generation, whether it's our own kids or just the generation that's out there, is promote our business in a positive light. And I feel like if there's one thing I've gotten from ISRI lately is by just watching how it works is they are actually trying to make a push to take guys like my dad's generation, your dad's generation, who was truly trying to fly under the radar and say, like, we don't need to fly under the radar. Like, we should be talking about all the good.
We should be proud.
The good things we're doing, right? And I think that's a big part of it. And I think you probably are looking forward to be a big part of that conversation because you check a ton of boxes that people might not really anticipate with a typical CEO a recycled materials company.
Yeah, we can't say scrap.
Yeah, we can. No, you can. You can, but I can't. But anyways, ultimately, I just want to thank you again. I want to take up a ton more of your time, but as a third generation, scrap guy, talking to another multi-generation scrap gal, like I know that it's like in your blood. You love it. As I see you drive around, like you're proud of what you have here, and like there's nothing I love more than watch people like walk around a scrap yard and just love what they do.
Thank you.
It bleeds through you, and I can see it. So
Thank you.
thank you for your time. Thank you to your dad for bringing you in and
Yes.
and conning you into to doing this, because I think the industry will be better for having you. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
Brett. Thank you.
And I think we're good.